السيد الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي رئيس
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, President of the Republic.
السيد الرئيس
Your Excellency, the President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, President of the Republic, dear youth, dear participants, you are most welcomed here in the simulation of the United Nations affiliated to the United Nations. Would you please allow me at the outset that I should inform this simulation during the Young Youth Forum. In this, more than 60 young girls and boys are participating from different countries of the world who are going to meet during the coming days in order to tackle different topics that are of importance internationally, like terrorism and the direct threat to all countries of the world, and the unorganized immigration and the challenges that confronts countries and migrants and other topics as well. And through participating in this simulation, those youth will be able to practice a vivid experience of what is taking place by countries in the United Nations through acting and representing the members of the United Nations. Security Council is one of the most important organs of the United Nations and is responsible for keeping international peace and security according to Charter of the United Nations, Chapter 7. This means that Security Council is responsible of encouraging peaceful settlement of disputes and having different operations for peacekeeping and imposing punishments and to use military force if matters require. Security Council has a legal obligation on the member states, and hence its resolutions are mandatory and binding to the country states according to Article number 4 of the Charter of the United Nations. The Security Council is formed from 15 members, 5 permanent members, and they have the right of the veto. These are Russia, China, France, UK, United States of America, and 10 non-permanent members that are elected by the General Assembly of the United Nations, and their membership is for 2 years. Egypt, Ethiopia, Senegal, Bolivia, Italy, Sweden, Uruguay, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and Japan. And every member of the Council has one vote, and resolutions are taken concerning the procedural matters by the approval of 9 at least from the 15 members. Among those are members of the 5 permanent members. To abstain from voting or absent of the permanent member does not stand against adopting this resolution. The Council meets wherever there is any threat for international peace and security. When there is a complaint given to the Security Council concerning threatening of the peace, the Council would recommend the parties in order to reach an agreement by peaceful methods. And the Council would do the following: put principles of this agreement or to be in order of compromise, or sending a mission, or having a special envoy, or to request a demand to Secretary General of the United Nations in order to exert efforts in order to settle this dispute by peaceful methods. When this dispute would lead to aggression, the main role of the Council is to try to limit this the soonest possible. In this case, the Council would do the following: passing instructions to cease fire in order not to increase this struggle, to send military or peacekeeping forces in order to alleviate from tension and to separate between both parties, and to have certain quietness and calmness in order to reach a peaceful settlement. In addition, the Council would decide taking the different arrangements to be implemented, including the following: economic economic punishment and banning and non-use of weapons, financial restrictions, banning or even military work. And in the simulation that we are going to have it now, the youth are to study different important matters that is threatening international peace and security, and to discuss these and to reach solutions within projects, bill projects or punishments. Your Excellency the President, would you please allow me to start the simulation of the United Nations? The Chairman, you have the floor.
Fighting them, to integrate our civilizations instead of clashing them. We are here as stakeholders of the future, to give a voice to our generation, to spread the voice of reason and a message of peace, to debate and face today's challenges in a civilized and reasonable manner. Honorable guests, as His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations said, our world is in trouble. People are hurting and angry. They see insecurity rising, inequality growing, conflict spreading, and climate changing. The global economy is increasingly integrated, but our sense of global community may be disintegrating. Societies are fragmented, political discourse is polarized. Trust within and among countries is being driven down by those who demonize and divide. We are a world in pieces, and we need a world at peace. Thank you all, and now we should start our session. Honorable Council, seeing we have quorum, the Security Council is now in session. I shall now yield the floor to the Honorable Rapporteur to proceed with the roll call.
Thank you, Most Honorable Chair. His Excellency, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, all distinguished guests, Honorable Chair, and Honorable Council. I shall now proceed by taking roll call. You may respond with present or present and voting, bearing in mind if you respond with present and voting, you waive your right to vote to abstain on substantive matters. Honorable observers, please be reminded that you may only respond with present. I shall now proceed with roll call. The plurinational state of Bolivia.
Present.
The People's Republic of China.
Present.
The Arab Republic of Egypt.
Present.
The Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia.
Present.
The French Republic.
Present and voting.
The Italian Republic.
Present.
The State of Japan.
Present.
The Republic of Kazakhstan.
Present.
The Russian Federation. The Senegal. The Kingdom of Sweden. The Ukraine. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The United States of America. The Oriental Republic of Uruguay. The Federal Republic of Germany. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Republic of South Africa. The Republic of Uganda.
Present.
The United Arab Emirates.
Present.
I have now concluded with roll call and shall now yield the floor to the Most Honorable Chair to preside over the Council.
Thank you, Honorable Rapporteur. Honorable Council, we shall now proceed with adopting the agenda. The provisional agenda reads as follows. 1. Combating threats to international peace and security caused by terrorist acts and groups. 2. Cyber warfare and its threats to nations. 3. Irregular migrations and challenges to countries and migrants. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the first topic is automatically adopted, and the agenda now reads as follows. Combating threats to international peace and security caused by terrorist acts and groups. We shall now proceed with the opening speeches. Please be reminded that you may give your speech, waive your right to give a speech, or postpone your speech, bearing in mind that the first delegation to postpone its speech will be the last to give its speech, and that during the opening speeches, no point of order shall be entertained. Honorable Delegation of Bolivia, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
His Excellency, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Honorable Chair and esteemed delegates, it is an unfortunate yet an undeniable truth that terrorism, which is currently operating at the local, regional, and global levels, is one of the greatest challenges facing not only the plurinational state of Bolivia, but the international community as a whole. Within the framework of the joint international counterterrorism effort, we must reiterate that terrorism cannot and should not be associated with any religion, nationality, civilization, or ethnic group, and that those characteristics should in no circumstances be used to justify measures aimed at fighting or preventing terrorism. Bolivia, as a state that promotes the culture of peace and first and foremost protects and guarantees human rights and respect for international law, is fulfilling its international obligations in the fight against terrorism. We have implemented the provisions set out in Resolution 1373. We have codified terrorism and terrorist financing as serious crimes, and we have in place a domestic agency to prevent, detect, investigate, and implement monitoring measures to avert the carrying out of terrorist attacks. Given the threat posed by terrorism and violent extremism to international peace and security, we believe that we must first tackle the root causes and its enabling forces around the world. However, must we emphasize that the policies of regime change, interventionism, and interference in the internal affairs of other states have been some of the key reasons that have led to the vacuums in governments, weaker law and order, and the absence of border control. Such factors facilitated the work of terrorist groups and extremists who find space to impose their violent ideology and commit acts of destabilization. We believe that all efforts of the Security Council and the United Nations to eliminate terrorism must be backed by all its members, who must seek out and bring the perpetrators to justice. They must be investigated, prosecuted, and punished to the fullest extent. Finally, we express our strong support for a transparent and balanced implementation of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy, and we call on all states to commit to fighting this scourge. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Bolivia. Honorable Delegation of China, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, esteemed guests of His Excellency, Honorable Chair, and fellow delegates. Several nations represented here today, including the People's Republic of China, have done a great effort in fighting terrorism. Yet still so many innocent citizens of these very same nations and around the world have been targeted and killed by terrorists in the recent days, months, and years. Honorable Council, what brings these nations here today is the mutual urge to collectively combat the increasing threats caused by terrorist acts and groups. The People's Republic of China believes that an effective counter-terrorism strategy is one that addresses the symptoms as well as the root causes of terrorism, while maintaining the sacredness of state sovereignty. Terrorism must not be associated with any particular ethnicity or religion. The international community should promote the use of political means and dialogue to address regional conflicts and eradicate the root causes that give rise to this evil phenomenon. Therefore, member states should adopt a comprehensive approach which includes political, diplomatic, economic, and other means to combat terrorism and its underlying causes. The People's Republic of China calls on all nations to coordinate with each other under the United Nations framework and be fully committed to collectively prevent and suppress the recruiting, organizing, transporting, and financing of terrorist fighters, as well as building state capacity in conflict zones, without ever forgetting that fighting the root causes of terrorism is equally important to fighting its symptoms. The People's Republic of China is looking forward to a constructive discussion and would like to state that in order to have a safer future, the battle against terrorism should be vested only to the United Nations and its Security Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of China. Honorable Delegation of Egypt, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. May you please allow me to speak in my native language?
Granted.
Thank you.
Your Excellency, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the Chairman, members of the Security Council, the world is standing today before a main determining point that is facing the humanity and that is affecting the hopes of the people of the world in living in peace. Now, the risk of terrorism is a major threat, an obstacle towards the safety of individuals and the sustainability of development plans and the sustainability of the world order and the regional order. And the world is at a certain turn. Today we are witnessing states that support terrorism as well as fundamentalist groups and that fund their activities and that spend on their weaponry in order to achieve limited political interests at the expense of the bloodshed, which is an extended form of war. And that we need today in order to reinstill our trust and our faith and the goals of the UN organization and its ability to put an end to extremism and to address and to counter terrorism and to achieve a world order that would respect justice, participation, and active communication. A world where we overcome differences and where we assume the joint responsibility and we deal with the sincere intentions and interests so as to achieve prosperity for our peoples and for the next generations. August Council, Egypt is facing a war against the forces of darkness and is achieving major successes in confronting such forces because of the stances of its people and its youth and the role of the police and the army and their sacrifices for the nation. And we believe in Egypt that addressing terrorism and eradicating it would make it inevitable to take action according to a comprehensive strategy as follows. First of all, to address and to overcome all the terrorist groups on all fronts and not to reduce terrorism in one group or in particular. Secondly, to take serious action, sincere action without any maneuvers or any reluctance towards all the states that support terrorism through funding and through supporting with weapons, and to reveal clearly the role of and destructive role of these countries against international peace and security. Third, to launch an intellectual revolution that would confront extremist thought and the distortion that is being used by these polarized communities, and to work through the various religious organizations worldwide to improve the religious discourse in order to instill the principles of the tolerant religions. Let's mention in this regard the calls and the steps that have been taken by Egypt towards religious institutions in order to improve religious discourse and to overcome intellectual thoughts and to achieve moderation. Fourth, to support the instilling of the modern state that has independent institutions, intact institutions that would adopt the concepts of the state of law, citizenship, and the respect of women and the enabling of the youth. In Egypt, we have established the High Council to confront terrorism and extreme thinking, to formulate the national comprehensive strategy to counter terrorism, and with the participation of representatives from all the institutions in order to face this phenomenon. In conclusion, Egypt is standing today in the face of terrorism while being strong and firm, supported by its people and its faith and its patience, which never ends. It takes strides, firm strides, towards sustainable growth and comprehensive development, despite the efforts of the forces of darkness. We are working very seriously within the frame of regional organizations and international organizations to resolve the issues of the region and to eradicate terrorism from our world. We are being not undermined by countering terrorism, but it makes us more faithful and in maintaining human rights and protection of the destinies of peoples. We believe in Egypt that the cooperation and collaboration of all the peace-loving nations is the only path in order to confront terrorism that faces humanity. May God crown our efforts with success, and whatever that would preserve the world's security. Egypt live long, and thank you so much.
His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Honorable Chair, Honorable Council, the entire humanity is now faced by a most perilous, formidable foe, which poses an existential threat not only to the current generation, but to all generations to come. The nation of Egypt has suffered immensely in the past few years at the hand of terrorism. More recently, ever since the year of 2013, we have continually lost valuable lives at the hand of extremists and terrorists. Honorable Council, Egypt is resolute in its costly war against terror. It has been forced to fight a vicious battle on behalf of the entire world. It wages this war on the front line without the support of many concerned states. Honorable Council, our most enlightened political leadership is aware of the fact that terrorism is more than just a gruesome method used by those led astray by false ideologies and beliefs. Egypt is aware that terrorism has become a new form of proxy wars, in which malevolent states dangerously provide support and funding to terrorist groups in the hopes of bringing the regime of another, a scenario we see evidently in the Middle East and more specifically in our beloved nation. Honorable Council, Egypt believes that terrorism is rooted in a number of causes. Accordingly, our country has adopted a comprehensive four-pillar counter-terrorism strategy that goes beyond military strategy and tactics. Strategy that tackles the political, economic, social, and ideological roots of terrorism. Egypt has also headed the United Nations Security Council Counter-Terrorism Subcommittee and is constantly working with its partners to prevent states supporting terrorism from continuing to do so. It is therefore imperative for the member states at this esteemed council to seriously consider following the path. The path our country has taken to combat terrorism for the better of all humanity. We look forward to a fruitful debate and a productive conversation in this conference. We're sure that our voices will be heard by this select council. Let us work to be united. Let us work be united to be as nations and to make sure that humanity is preserved. Live long Egypt, long live humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Egypt. Honorable Delegation of Ethiopia, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Honorable Chair, Honorable Council. The delegation of Ethiopia is honored to have the opportunity to take part in this prestigious conference to debate the issue concerning combating the threats to the international peace and security caused by terrorist acts and groups the world suffers from in our present time. The Horn of Africa is one of the regions where terrorism has been widespread for many years. Even before 9/11, Ethiopia has experienced repeated terrorist attacks. The state in the Horn of Africa shares economic, social, cultural, and historical conditions. Some of the challenges the region faces, including widespread poverty, unemployment, frequent natural disaster, as well as dangers posed by ideological and extremist religious groups that could have provided conditions for the spread of illegal migration and different forms of terrorism like cyber and armed terrorism. Ethiopia experienced over 250 cyber attacks in the first quarter of 2017. Also one of the countries that had its physical and cyber infrastructure affected by WannaCry virus attack earlier in this year. In this context, we should seek final and just solutions, in particular to enhance counter-terrorism cooperation and undertake a series of legal and other measures to combat terrorism in all its forms. Honorable Chair, Ethiopia calls for enhancing capacity building, technical assistance, and resources of the states to implement counter-terrorism measures. The supremacy of politics over the military components should be prioritized as a counter-terrorism strategy. We would take this opportunity to reiterate Ethiopia's fullest commitment to the implementation of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy. Ethiopia supports all efforts all efforts and at the strengthening anti-terrorism conventions within the framework of the United Nations. Ethiopia has ratified the International Convention, Suppression of Terrorism Bombing, which was adopted by Resolution 5264, as well as the International Convention for the Suppression of Financing of Terrorism and other international agreements and protocols related to counterterrorism. In conclusion, we would expect an impassioned, productive debate in the lead of our fellow keen delegates representing member states to find efficient solution for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Ethiopia. Honorable Delegation of France, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. His Excellency, Mr. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Honorable Chair and fellow delegates, France is an envoy of peace. It is from this platform that the delegation addresses the pressing issues of today and seeks to find the solutions the international community so desperately needs. The French Republic has recently grappled with the menace of terrorism and has endured more than its fair share of cowardly acts of hate and violence instigated on its soil. The unfortunate series of terrorist attacks that has unfolded in France during the past 2 years has taken the lives of more than 230 individuals. Therefore, we must stand resolute. We must stand resolute in our defiance of the ugly paradigms of death and destruction supported by these terrorist groups. We must stand resolute in our defense of the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. We must stand resolute for those who we've lost and for those who we will continue to do our utmost to protect. The French delegation will continue to support collaborative but aggressive measures to eradicate the threat of terrorism and to restore international peace. These measures will include the curating of bilateral agreements to ease the sharing of intel crucial to terrorist-related investigations and to facilitate the monitoring and reconstruction of narratives propagated by terrorist groups on media platforms. The undertaking of calculated and targeted military intervention in areas where terrorist groups continue to spread their destructive agenda, and the transformation of social, economic, and political institutions. It is important to understand that terrorism is not exogenous. It does not exist in a vacuum. We need to recognize and address the current global dynamics that are exacerbating its proliferation and bolstering its foundations. In that vein, the international community desperately needs to address the issues of irregular migration and cyber warfare. France is calling for more cohesive and collaborative measures to shelter displaced individuals from the pernicious influence of terrorist ideals and to provide them with alternatives and foreign and local repatriation and support. Furthermore, the delegation of France is eager to pursue new legislations to regulate the cyber capabilities of countries and organizations. In light of these issues, the delegation of France is eager to spread its message of peace and to arrive at solutions to some of the most pressing issues of our day, all the while upholding the sanctified institutions of liberty and freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of France. Honorable Delegation of Italy, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Honorable Chair, Honorable Council. The Italian Republic, as a non-permanent state member of the Security Council, in light of the international peace instability generated by terrorist acts and threats that are not exclusive to any religion, nationality, civilization, or ethnicity, is effectively calling for a comprehensive global humanitarian aid. In accordance to the UN Charter, the international law and the support of the international community, especially the EU, Italy's contribution to this joint threat is multidimensional. It advocates that our response has to be holistic, engaging political, economic, and social aspects as well. As now, the Italian delegation will state its principles as follows. Stemming from the moral responsibility and the strategic investment in our future, firstly comes prevention, not only countering. Long-term solutions should be based on an understanding of the root causes of extremism, besides underlying its economic, social, and political realms. Secondly, it's appropriate to continue to focus on borders control. However, full implementation of the relevant UN resolutions to cut off the financial sources of terrorism by fully implementing respective resolutions 2199 and 2253 is of crucial necessity, as well as preventing terrorists from using the internet and social media to commit terrorist acts. In this regard, we refer to resolution 2250. Third, the international cooperation. The responsibility for preventing violent extremist acts lies with member states with the support of the UN system and the alliance with regional and sub-regional organizations. My final and most important point tackles culture and education, which are at the core of our action as a complementary method for prevention of violent extremism. A strong need for a modern educational system encompassing common values such as fundamental rights of democracy, the rule of law, and recognition of human dignity stand at the basis of a peaceful community. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Italy. Honorable Delegation of Japan, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Your Excellency, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Honorable Chair, Honorable Delegates. Today, the Security Council remained a pivotal and indispensable pillar to preserving and promoting international peace and security. The Security Council stands supported by a history of successes, having fulfilled a mandate and made possible peace and security in regions made vulnerable to distress, chaos, and are of global concern. Today, terrorism is a global and imminent threat, one that has migrated ways into becoming a daily menace. It's no longer reserved for grandiose attack and mass occurrence. Instead, it has become part of every day. Today, terrorism comes at the cost of citizens. It is not a single region that is under threat. Instead, the international community as a whole is vulnerable to terrorism. As terrorists know, no religion, ethnicity, race, or nationality in the source. It also knows no religion, ethnicity, race, and nationality in the target. The gravity of the situation forces us to address it immediately and urgently, taking into account all dimensions pertinent and because of it. The delegation of Japan has taken many measures toward combating this issue and continue to develop policies, strategies, and schemes in order to deal with the evolving nature of terrorism. Japan is forcing to protecting of critical infrastructure, international judicial cooperation, and counter narratives. Also, Japan works to involve its civil society. On this front, Japan has been relatively successful. However, the success of Japan remains incomplete and almost irrelevant without the success of the international community as a whole in combating this issue. And thus, today, Japan is confident the Security Council will prove to be, once again, the productive instrument in combating this issue at hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Japan. Honorable Delegation of Kazakhstan, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Most Honorable Chair, esteemed Council. The Republic of Kazakhstan is honored and pleased to be present in this pressing meeting to discuss a very vital issue, which is combating terrorism caused by terrorist acts and groups. Terrorism has become an increasingly complex threat in our modern world due to the ability of terrorist groups and organizations to plan and execute terrorist attacks, making use of new technology. This has resulted in the heinous deaths of innocent civilians all over the globe. To combat terrorism and violent extremism, the people of Kazakhstan call for the establishment of global coalition against terrorism under the aegis of United Nations. We believe that this joint fight would contribute in responding to the security challenges that our Central Asian region is facing nowadays, as well as the security challenges facing the entire globe. Kazakhstan believes a huge barrier lies on lack of sociological awareness and cultural defiance to peaceful coexistence of regions in multiple states. Kazakhstan has recently been part of Religions Against Terrorism conference in Astana, and would like to reiterate that by addressing the micro-level awareness, the process of fighting terrorism becomes more achievable. Most Honorable Council, Kazakhstan aspires that by the end of this meeting we would come up with more effective measures to combat terrorism and terrorist groups. Our delegation believes in the ability of United Nations Security Council to reach a remarkable solution that would contribute in reducing the effect of terrorism globally. The Republic of Kazakhstan started its duty as a non-permanent member of this Honorable Council last January, with commitment of doing its best to contribute in achieving international peace and security. The delegation calls upon all member states to come together for this goal. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Most Honorable Chair. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation. Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Kazakhstan. Honorable Delegation of Russia, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, honorable chairs, distinguished delegates. The delegation of the Russian Federation is honored to be present today at this historical session of the Security Council addressing the pressing issue of terrorism. By gathering here, we are doing more than demonstrating our shared responsibility and unity to fight against global terrorism. In the faith of the original aim of the United Nations to unite our strength and to maintain international peace and security, we truly hope that during our session, important ideological, political, legal, and organizational bases of combating terrorism will be laid. Since terrorism is not just separate acts and methods of committing violence, but rather a multi-layered phenomenon, the solution has to be multidisciplinary as well. Terrorism has to be prevented, uncovered, and defeated. In the last 10 years, Russia has been a victim of multiple terrorist attacks, causing thousands of casualties. Therefore, it's our role to perform, our duty to fulfill, and our promise to stop and eliminate any threat imposed on the Russian Federation and our allies. In the light of what happened in April 2017 in St. Petersburg, Russia recognizes counterterrorism as a key priority in its foreign affairs policies, and we believe that today it's even more important to address the challenges more efficiently posed on the member states by terrorism. We firmly believe that the Security Council will agree with our delegation, as mentioned in the UNSC Resolution 1373, that we have to prevent the further expansion of terrorism, we have to stop them spreading their ideology, we have to cut their communications channels, we have to destroy all their safe haven, and we also have to give a strong answer to already committed actions. Any attempts to instigate and fund terrorism, academic terrorists, or use terrorists for political means or goals must meet general condemnation. Russia is ready and willing to cooperate with all parties towards the eradication of international terrorism, with no double standards, hidden agendas, or personal privileges. We would like to remind the Honorable Council that we are not only need to conduct dialogues, but we also have to take actions and implement sustainable policies to combat terrorism. Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Council.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Russia. Honorable Council, Honorable guests, please refrain from side talks. Honorable Delegation of Senegal, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, distinguished guests, Honorable Chair, Honorable Delegates. First of all, the delegation of Senegal wants to thank you for convening this open debate to discuss one of the most critical issues that threaten the entire world. Senegal condemns the phenomenon of terrorism in all its forms and manifestation. Terrorism cannot and should not be associated with any religion, nationality, or civilization. Over the years, terrorism has become the most significant challenge to peace, security, and development in Africa. Senegal supports the central role of United Nations UN Security Council, promoting international cooperation in fighting terrorism in the framework of UN Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy. Although Senegal advocates that the reform of international institutions, in particular the Security Council, for better global governance, Senegal also assures the significant role of the African Union. The Organization of African Unity Convention on the Prevention and Combating of Terrorism 1999 and its Plan of Action 2002 had put in place a solid framework to deal with terrorism in Africa. Esteemed Council, fighting terrorism is a shared responsibility of all countries. Therefore, all countries should pursue common, collective, comprehensive, and sustainable security. Priority must be given to tackling all threats to international peace and security through finding a fair solution to all conflicts around the world. Respect, dignity, and humanity must be extended to all migrants, refugees, and displaced persons all over the world. Esteemed Council, the world has never been as violent and dangerous as it is today. So, let us unite more closely than ever before for promoting peace. Let the vision of peaceful world take root in our hearts and minds. Let the ambitions of growth, progress, development, prosperity, safety, security, equality, fairness and justice prevail the world. When we have sincere wish and goodwill, no obstacle is too strong to be removed and no problem is too difficult to be tackled. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Senegal. Honorable Delegation of Sweden, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you. His Excellency, Mr. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, esteemed guests, Honorable Chair, and fellow delegates. For all the time invested by states, for all the efforts, talks, and endeavors discussed to fully eradicate the agonizing threat of terrorism, the delegation of Sweden acknowledges that it is becoming harder and harder to ambush the monster we call terrorism. Today, international terrorism is clearly one of the greatest threats to international peace and security, and it is our role as the Security Council to exterminate it. The Kingdom of Sweden is appalled by the world today. The impact of terrorism is evident, and anyone can perceive how horrifying the acts committed by terrorist groups are. We, as member states, must unite to protect those who live on this planet we call home. This fight against terrorism needs a coordinated response, and it is necessary to eliminate the supply of weapons and finance to terrorists. It is our responsibility as representatives of the world to extend assistance to those in need. Our primary instrument to make this possible is through international cooperation with the Counterterrorism Committee and other international efforts. The world needs to recognize that civilians are the primary casualties of these threats, and we need to act fast to maintain those values which are protected by international law. That is why the Kingdom of Sweden launched the Swedish National Counterterrorism Strategy in 2012, and that is also why we have strived for progress in implementing the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy. We, the Kingdom of Sweden, as a member of the Security Council, acknowledge that this organ faces the responsibility of ensuring peace and security. Before concluding our speech, we would like to extend our condolences to the victims of terrorism and their families. Sweden promises to stand against the support and funding that by any means assist acts of terrorism. Finally, we would like to conclude with the words of our Prime Minister. Our message for terrorist groups will always be clear. You cannot control our lives. You cannot suppress us. You will never win. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Sweden. Honorable Delegation of Ukraine, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Honorable Chair, Honorable Council. Ukraine first would like to express how much it's pleased and honor to be present today in this honorable meeting in order to discuss a very crucial issue, that is combating terrorism and terrorist groups who hide under false flags in order to reach their political objectives. The international community is also combating an ideology of violent extremism which easily got and can easily get into our societies if no serious international measures are to be taken. In spite of all the sufferings Ukraine faces due to the vector attacks that hit the east of our country and presence of the foreign terrorist fighters, Ukraine keeps peacekeeping and peace building on the top of its priorities to establish an atmosphere of mutual trust in the international relations. Since the very first years of Ukrainian independence, it becomes a significant contributing and staunch supporter of the United Nations peacekeeping operations by over 34,000 Ukrainian participants that took part in over 20 operations. Ukraine also participated in global coalition against terrorism to guarantee effective implementation of United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy, and the Secretary General's plan of action to prevent violent extremism is well encouraged by the Ukrainian government side. Ukraine also offering capabilities to support Counterterrorism Committee, Executive Director to implement resolutions 1373, 1624, and 2178. Mr. President, the goal seems clear, but unfortunately, some states keep supporting terrorism instead of facing it. However, the world will gain nothing but more innocent victims, world destruction instead of building civilizations, irregular migration, and more extremism.
The consequences will also turn over the supported countries, so no-win situation here, and they have to stop that immediately. Also, a clear international strategic leadership and judicial cooperation is essential to ensure that no terrorist would escape from justice. Ukraine believes that this council can reshape the world and make it a better place to live, and that's why we're here today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Ukraine, Honorable Delegation of United Kingdom. You now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Esteemed guests, Honorable Chair, fellow delegates, the delegation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is pleased to attend this prestigious event to discuss a pressing issue that concerns us all, terrorism. Since the late 20th century, the terrorism spectrum has risen from a relatively minute issue to one of the key challenges to our global security, killing tens of thousands of people in all corners of the world. For the past decade, terrorist groups have been operating within the religious and political scopes, using violence and terrible acts to spread their ideas and destabilize communities. Their dangerous ideologies have attracted tremendous numbers of individuals from all over the world. These aspects make it that terrorism has taken a new path distinct from conflict or war between nations. The United Kingdom remains devoted to work with other member states and UN organizations to develop and implement plans to safeguard the international community from those groups who seek to destroy it bit by bit. It has been working with the Security Council's Counter-Terrorism Committee to find solutions to put an end to these terrible acts. The United Kingdom proposes a number of steps to be taken on different levels to combat terrorism more effectively. First, strengthen member states' national legislations related to terrorism. Second, evolve a common grid to share information on terrorist activities, illicit arms trafficking, and money laundering. Third, create systems to track down suspects more effectively, follow what they do and where they go, taking into consideration and with full respect to international and humanitarian law. Last, develop joint military expertise sharing capabilities between regions and nations. Finally, the United Kingdom wishes to offer its condolences to the victims of terrorist attacks, their families, and the affected communities. It promises to work hand in hand with countries to abolish these terrible acts in all regions of the world in order to maintain international peace and security, which is our common goal here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of United Kingdom, Honorable Delegation of United States of America. You now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Honorable Council, distinguished delegates. Ever since the atrocious attacks of 9/11, the United States of America has worked tirelessly and sparking no expense to defeat the evil that is terrorism. We define terrorism as a premeditated, politically motivated violence perpetrated against non-competent targets by subnational groups or clandestine agents. The United States sponsored the past Security Council Resolution 1373 that created the Counter-Terrorism Committee following the attacks of 9/11. Reaching a unified definition for terrorism is an important step to take. However, it doesn't seem to be the right time to come to this definition for a multitude of reasons. The United States has led the war against terrorism to protect our people and the people of the world. The United States would like to emphasize on the importance of international cooperations between all present states in order to solve this issue that affects us all. State-funded terrorism and rogue nations present the great threats to security of international community. By comparing state-funded terrorism, we can greatly weaken terrorist organizations. The spirit of gathering today should overhaul the approach of countering terrorist funding, stressing the awareness of our shared obligation not to reject violence only, but also to deliver together an unfading message of partnership. We believe that through the cooperation of all member states who believe in the fundamentals of sovereignty, security, and prosperity, we can reach an agreement for the sharing of terrorism-related information to effectively combat terrorist threats before they materialize. The utilization of regional agreements will present the greatest stride in global cooperation. We believe that we can expand on those partnerships to make them more effective so as to prevent the spread of terrorism in post-conflict areas. If the righteous many don't comfort the wicked few, the evil will triumph. The United States is ready to remain at the forefront of fighting against terror. So let this our mission, and let this to be our message to the world. We will fight together, sacrifice together, and stand together for peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of United States of America. Honorable Delegation of Uruguay, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable President. Esteemed guests, Honorable Chair, Honorable Council, the delegation of the Oriental Republic of Uruguay believes that it is vital for every member state to fight against terrorism. Terrorist acts and groups are a pressing security threat that requires collective action from the esteemed members in this Council. The delegation of Uruguay believes it is salient to consider the rise of multiple terrorist groups, as well as their ability to attack numerous areas. It is vital to assess the motives behind terrorist groups, as they are able and willing to inflict harm upon mankind, legitimized by the altered interpretation of religious texts. It is important to note that the Islamic State may not necessarily direct all terrorist attacks, bearing in mind the multiple splinter groups that sympathize and operate with the Islamic State. We must take into account the complex nature of the attacks claiming to be in the name of religion, ideology, belief, ethnicity, and nationality, with the intent to threaten what the terrorist perceives as the other. During the 1980s and 1990s, Latin America was the epicenter of global terrorist organizations. Later on, the attacks dramatically decreased due to the presence of proactive governments and ferocious counterterrorism strategies. However, some countries are still facing challenges composed by terrorist organizations. As a result, terrorism migrated to other regions, indicating that terrorism has no specific borders. Thus, it is this Council's duty to understand the root causes of the phenomenon at hand in order to curb and eventually eliminate the attacks. It is important to create a system that prohibits, criminalizes, and creates a system of retribution in the cases of financing, providing assistance, and safe haven to terrorist groups. We believe that education, social equality, and civil rights are imperative within the socio-political infrastructure of any member state, whilst abiding to their sustainable development goals. Honorable Council, the delegation of Uruguay highly recommends cooperation among member states on technical and intelligence levels. We believe that terrorism cannot be eradicated unless member states commit to their international obligations whilst acting multilaterally. Thus, the delegation of Uruguay seeks to devise council-wide sustainable solutions and will vote in favor of any resolution that will assist in eradicating terrorism. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Uruguay. Honorable Delegation of Germany, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, Honorable Council. Terrorism has been at the forefront of all global events, as illustrated in the recent attacks in the United Kingdom, Spain, France, and Belgium. Terrorist organizations such as ISIL, Al-Qaeda, and other groups have evolved to exploit its fanatic and violent attacks on transborder scale. Honorable Council, the scourges of terrorism and its increasing strikes that have reached multiple regions worldwide compel the international community to stand in unity and to double its effort to fight extremism and individuals who terrorize innocent men, women, and children around the world. On national level, member states must first and foremost adapt their domestic criminal code to fully implement relevant Security Council resolutions and applicable international standards. On regional level, member states must seek ways of open dialogue and cooperation with the aim of establishing a broader and a comprehensive response to cross-border terrorism, human trafficking, and the non-proliferations of weapons of mass destruction. While on international level, the delegation of Germany reiterates and reaffirms on the importance of endorsing the Secretary General's plans of action to prevent violent extremism and the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy. Germany is firmly committed to the full implementation of the relevant Security Council resolutions, including Resolution 2178, 2199, and 2253. Honorable Council, Germany wishes through the United Nations to overhaul a strong counterterrorism architecture that lives up to the challenges of today. An architecture that involves economic, social, and cultural aspects as part of our fight against terrorism. You may rest assured that Germany is fully committed to doing its share. We are stronger than terrorism. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Germany, Honorable Delegation of Saudi Arabia. You now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. Esteemed members of the Council, honorable guests, using the platform of United Nations, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia wants to once again establish itself as a key player in the fight against global terror and extremism. And it will continue pledging to do so. And it is through this region's security and stability that the world might find a chance to establish peace and security in the world. It is through our cooperation, it is through our collective fight against terrorism, it is through the multilateral global effort that we can bring the rise of radical non-state forces to an end. And along with this, the tide of destruction and bloodshed that follows. It is through the cooperation amongst the nations and the pragmatic politics that we can eliminate regional and international terrorist threats, as well as the reprimand of the states that sponsor the international terrorism ideologies. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia continues to embrace its role as a prime global partner in fighting terrorism on the regional and international scale by continue taking actions and initiatives, reiterating its unwavering stance against the terrorism and maintaining a multifaceted approach in combating terrorism. We are determined to take actions either by the military forces against the radical preparators to deter their gains, and also by swift measures to cut the financing to the terrorists. We are also determined to innovate the efforts to eliminate the very ideology of terrorism by fighting its very ideology and using the innovative efforts using the call for moderation in education and social institutions. Honorable Council and esteemed delegates, now this is the time that we stand together to find the solutions to combat the terrorism and collectively condemn the well-known players of the region that promote religious sectarianism and extremism. And without this terrorism at its very core and its very ideology, it's very hard to establish peace in the Middle East and also for the world. Honorable diplomats, let it be more clear that we are not together here today to woo each other with the intricate verbose or clever political wordplay, but today we gather to put forth pragmatic solutions and sustainable solutions to rid our world to make it better for ourselves and the generations to come. With these remarks, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Saudi Arabia, Honorable Delegation of South Africa. You now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Most Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, Honorable Council, the delegation of South Africa is honored to be part of this Security Council session. The delegation believes that the topic in hand is of great importance because threats to international peace and security jeopardize the very existence of humanity. The delegation of South Africa has been a huge supporter to the fight against terrorism. Our troops have participated in several UN peacekeeping missions to maintain international stability and prosperity. We have financially supported the development programs in many post-conflict areas. In addition, South Africa has strongly backed the African Union's campaign of silencing the guns by 2020 in Africa. Indeed, the threat to international peace and security from terrorist groups continues to grow day after day. As the Security Council, our priority has been and will always be the maintenance of international peace and security. Therefore, we as the delegation of South Africa believe that through our assembly in this session,
It has become our duty to find innovative and technical solutions to eradicate the threats to world international stability. It has become clear that the actions of the international community have fallen short of what is required to face terrorism and violent extremism. We need to observe the key drivers of violent extremism and the conditions needed for durable peace. To do so, collaborations with regional organizations, local governments, and NGOs are necessary. Honorable delegates, as long as social and economic needs are not met in developing countries, terrorism and violent extremism will continue to expand and grow. The delegation of South Africa has faith in the outcome of the upcoming sessions. We have faith that through our cooperation and our support for multilateralism, the threats presented to the international community could be limited, if not abolished. Honorable delegates, our people are suffering the dire consequences of terrorism. They are calling for us to act, and we need to call. We need to answer the call. Honorable delegates, we need to collaborate our forces. We need to respect our differences. We need to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of South Africa. Honorable Delegation of Uganda, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honorable Chair, esteemed delegations, distinguished guests, the delegation of the Republic of Uganda is honored to participate in this meeting of the United Nations Security Council as an observer in order to discuss an issue of particular importance to the East African region. The threat posed by global terrorism has been significant in the previous decades, and the Republic of Uganda has been embroiled in a long-fought struggle with forces that would wish to see our values of peace and freedom from fear eradicated. Militant insurgencies in East Africa, such as the Lord's Resistance Army, have devastated a generation of Africans, kidnapping young boys and forcing them to fight for their cause under the threat of death, perpetuating a vicious cycle of violence that has deprived far too many Ugandan children of a prosperous future. Al-Shabaab in Somalia has launched a concerted effort aimed at ensuring that the Somali people would forever be subject to rule by those who veil themselves in piety while engaging in practices no different from the warlords of old. The Ugandan people have been steadfast in their determination to see that these extremists and those like them fail to see the realization of this goal. However, no one country, no matter how capable, is sufficient to eradicate terrorism alone. International cooperation is necessary in order to combat this threat, which, by its very nature, is not limited by borders. In recent years, the Republic of Uganda has made the combating of terrorism in all of its forms one of our most pressing national duties. This delegation vehemently believes in the importance of encouraging new avenues of cooperation based on capacity building and the use of new and innovative techniques, cybersecurity, and information gathering. It is important that the African continent sees the rise of strong actors in the field of counterterrorism, and the Republic of Uganda takes upon itself the responsibility to stand up to the occasion. The delegation of Uganda urges the Council to not allow the terrorist activities conducted by a small, though visible number of militant groups monopolize the discussion, and to take substantive steps towards combating terrorism on a truly global scale. Thank you, and we yield the floor to the most honorable dais.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Uganda. Honorable Delegation of United Arab Emirates, you now have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, distinguished guests, Honorable Council. The UAE delegation is honored to be there to discuss such a critical topic, which is affecting and endangering all of our futures. The United Arab Emirates is guided by principles consistent with the Charter of the United Nations and international law, a spirit of partnership, good neighborliness, and non-interference in the internal affairs of other states. Despite serious regional and international efforts, our world continues to suffer from several crises such as extremism, terrorism, cyber warfare, and irregular migration. It is crucial that we distinguish between words and actions. It is important for us to take a stand against those whose actions reflect their intention to cause instability rather than cooperation and peace. We fight not only alongside the League of Arab States regionally, but also with any other coalition internationally that would strive to combat terrorism. The UAE believes that terrorism will not be defeated militarily only, but that other approaches are needed. Therefore, the UAE follows a strategy based on 5 pillars: military counterterrorism, disrupting illicit financing, social and cultural means and civil society support, countering extremist propaganda and the exploitation of web and social media, and stopping the flow of foreign fighters. We must stop the growth of terrorism by focusing on minimizing the alienation felt by specific groups within society. It is imperative that we therefore understand our society's needs and capabilities before we can better tackle the issue. Honorable delegates, we need to provide platforms to encourage moderate voices that have the potential to prevent the intended influence of hate and radical speeches imposed on those particularly vulnerable within society. We must embrace diversity, public participation, and tolerance. The UAE firmly believes that the stability of Egypt is the cornerstone of the stability of the region. Thus, our country supports Egypt to restore its pivotal and historical role in the region. Our country emphasizes its support for regional and international effort to ensure that security and peace are maintained. Honorable delegates, 2018 in the UAE was declared the Year of Zayed, who impacted a glorious human and cultural legacy, noble values, unity, and peace. So let us stand united against those who finance, promote, and justify extremism and terrorism, and against those who endanger our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of United Arab Emirates, Honorable Council. Seeing we have concluded with the opening speeches, we are now in formal debate. Any delegation wishing to add their name to the speakers list, please raise your hand high and keep them high until recognized by the chair. Honorable Delegation of Egypt, Honorable Delegation of China, Honorable Delegation of Bolivia, Honorable Delegation of France, Honorable Delegation of Ethiopia, Honorable Delegation of United Arab Emirates, Honorable Delegation of Uganda, Honorable Delegation of Saudi Arabia, Honorable Delegation of South Africa, Honorable Delegation of Italy, Honorable Delegation of Japan, Honorable Delegation of Kazakhstan, Honorable Delegation of Russia, Honorable Delegation of Senegal, Honorable Delegation of Ukraine, Honorable Delegation of United Kingdom, Honorable Delegation of Sweden, Honorable Delegation of United States of America, Honorable Delegation of Uruguay, Honorable Delegation of Germany.
Point of order.
Yes, Honorable Delegation of Bolivia, what is your point?
Honorable President, the delegation of Bolivia would like to raise a motion to suspend the meeting till Wednesday, the 8th of November at 10 a.m.
Thank you, Honorable Delegation of Bolivia. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we are now, the council ends and we will meet tomorrow at Wednesday, the 8th.